Hi, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Living Together. We are happy to introduce to you Carol Bublitz from MSUE, Michigan State University Extension Office. Today, she's going to speak to us about Kids Can Cook Too. Just a reminder, now you can see that things are switching. So when you come in, your audio is automatically muted. And if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And just a reminder that this is recorded so that it can be sent out to the community and more people can enjoy it. So at this point, my name is Carolyn McKenzie, and I'm on the team that puts together the McKenzie Health System's Healthy Living Together. And I have the honor of introducing Carol Bublitz. As I said, she's a community nutrition instructor for Michigan State University Extension Office. And so at this point, a reminder that if you have questions during the presentation, just put them in the question and answer box, and I will relay them to Carol. All right, Carol, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad.
We can't hear you.
I'm so glad to be here today. Are we hearing better?
Yes.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about Kids Can Cook Too, and we're going to talk about it as kind of a whole experience, not just like kids can make a recipe, but all the great stuff that kids get out of cooking and the learning that can go with it. I remember when I was, almost kindergarten age, my parents lived with my grandmother, and they did a lot of cooking and canning, and I can remember my grandma having me write the word corn on a piece of masking tape so she could put it on her canned corn. And I found that as an adult, I found that can, and it had the letter C and the letter R backwards. They were all in the right order, but they were backwards. And I think about that and I go, she could have said, oh no, we got to do that over. We got to do that right. But what I remember from it was a sense of accomplishment and mastery and confidence and excitement. And like, I was so excited to be in the kitchen with grandma and mom, and I wanted to keep doing it. And I think that's kind of what we want from Kids Can Cook Too, is not so much how to do a recipe, but let's help kids have that experience that they can be competent in what they're doing and enjoy it. Because we know that when kids help with cooking, when they know where their food comes from, all those kinds of things, they eat it better. And we want them to eat those healthy foods. We don't want to just put them on the table and then scrape them into the garbage at the end of the meal. So let me share my screen here. So kids can cook too. And little guys can put just things on plates. That can be cooking. Cooking doesn't have to mean applying heat. It could mean providing food. So these are some pictures that some children made meals, just some from fruits and veggies. And look how happy they all are with their fruits and their veggies. At MSU Extension, everyone's welcome to participate in our programs, to make use of our materials. We are an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer, and our programs are open to all without regard. So we're going to make a healthy snack today, baked vegetable chips. I know a lot of us will grab a handful of chips for a snack. We'll have them to go along with a sandwich, we'll have them by themselves, we'll have them with a dip. But they got so much fat and so much salt that we go, well, it's not really healthy, but it's yummy. So let's blend the healthy and the yummy. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to make them, but also a little bit about where they come from. I'm going to use bits and pieces from a curriculum called Grow It, Try It, Like It, that's designed for preschoolers, but I think it has some stuff in it for all of us. One of the things that we want to think about is, what does it mean to be healthy? What's a healthy food if we're going to cook a healthy food? So you can go to myplate.gov and get a lot of great information about what makes a healthy meal or a healthy snack. But I put this here so you can see that it's really easy to make half your plate fruits and vegetables, to have the grains, protein, and dairy there. But you notice there's more vegetables than there are fruits. So our baked vegetable chips would fit really well in this. When you go there, there's resources for your kids as well, and there's a whole recipe set called My Kitchen. There's also just some odds and ends that help parents. I thought this one was kind of cool. Phrases that help and hinder. And down at the bottom, it says, one thing we could try saying is, we can try these vegetables again another time. Next time, would you like to try them raw instead of cooked? And I read that and I thought, well, why wait till next time? Let's do it this time. So if we're going to make sweet potato chips, let's try the sweet potatoes raw. Let's make them like carrot sticks. Unless you're really familiar with the inside of a sweet potato and the inside of a carrot stick, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. So as we're doing these things, it's great when kids are cooking to let them try anything that's safe to try. Now, we wouldn't let them try things like raw eggs, or now they're telling us raw flour is not safe, so no raw cookie dough or cake batter. But raw vegetables would be a great experience to try while they're cooking. And then they can compare them with the cooked product, and they have that much more they can learn about food, and maybe that many more foods they'd like to cook and eat. So we can ask them to use their senses, and we can do it right along with them. How does the outside look? What's it feel like? How does the inside look? What's it feel like? How does it smell? How does it taste? Well, sweet potatoes are really firm, and the outside's kind of rough. The inside's not juicy or anything. This is a good thing to know when we're making the chips, because any of the root vegetables are going to feel similar. They're going to be firm. They're going to be, they would sound hard if you thunked them on the table. The outside might feel kind of rough. We wouldn't want to try to make a chip out of something like a strawberry or a kiwi, because they're soft and mushy and juicy, which is fabulous in so many other ways, but it would not bake up into a good chip. So exploring what makes this food good is part of good cooking. Letting them learn how the things grow. That can be a really useful way. You might just grab a sweet potato that you have on hand. So I'm going to stop sharing a moment. And you might just grab a sweet potato, and if you stick some popsicle sticks or toothpicks in it, put it in a jar of water, you can end up with the plant itself. So then you can have a plant to grow, and you can talk about how it grows. And as we continue talking about the sweet potatoes, they can remember, hey, we did this before. We planted those. Maybe you've got it growing in a pot or out in your yard, depending on what your space is like. And you may have the slips, which is the sprouts and the roots together, planted separately. You may get several plants from one sweet potato. And then we could guess, like, how many chips could I make from that? There's all kinds of fun games. They can see that it's a vine, but it doesn't have blossoms like a squash or a pumpkin. And then in the fall, when the leaves are falling off the trees, the leaves on this vine dry up, and it's time to dig the sweet potatoes. These are not ready. I dug them in a hurry because I needed the picture. If I'd left them in the ground about another month or so, they would have been a whole lot bigger. So any cooking experience, whether it's making gelatin or scooping ice cream or making our baked vegetable chips, we want to start with washing our hands. And then as we're going through it, we may need to wash our hands over and over again. And then when we're finished, we want to wash to make sure we've left everything clean. And later on, I'm going to have an activity where we do talk about how hand washing works with kids. We want to let them help us choose the ingredients and the equipment. So here's a basket that has white potatoes in it, like the ones you'll see in today's recipe. It also has red potatoes, the yellow ones, and the purple ones. You could use any and all of those. You could make red, white, and blue potato chips for 4th of July or Labor Day or Memorial Day or whatever. You want to choose equipment that's safe and talk together about the safety. So this is a mandolin, and you can see there's a guard. The mandolin guard is really important. So this part right here, we want to make sure that the potato gets stuck in it and that it is held in place, so as we slide it back and forth against the blade there, we don't get our fingers in it because we don't want any sliced fingers or anything like that. Let me get rid of that. There we go. Remember that our sweet potatoes, and beets grow under the ground. That's part of why we wanted to talk with kids about it. Because it grows under the ground, it really needs to be scrubbed. If you can designate a scrub brush just for fruits and vegetables, you want to scrub those hard ones. And kids, oh, running water and scrub brushes and kids, doesn't that sound like a recipe for fun? Have a towel there. There might be some things you have to wipe up. You might need a step stool to get to the sink, depending on the age of your child. But scrubbing well to get as much soil off as possible removes germs, grit. Who wants to eat something that's got grit in between their teeth? So we're going to scrub everything really well. And we want to talk to them before we begin about the safety. We already looked at this potato. Here it is stuck into the guard. We want to make sure that knives are facing away from us, that we talk about safety with the sharp edge, with the point. If a knife falls, we just step back and let it fall. We don't try to catch it. And if your knife has a guard when it's not in use, it's a great idea to have that guard on it. Especially if you're keeping them in the drawer. It keeps your knife sharp and it keeps people from being cut when they're reaching into the drawer to get it. So here's a video, and Cody's going to tell us how to safely slice, dice, and mince. And Carolyn's going to give me a heads up if the sound doesn't come through very well, and we'll see if we can fix that. Hopefully it's all going to work for us.
Before we start any food preparation today, we're going to go over a couple guidelines. So to follow our food safety rules, we are going to make sure we have all clean and sanitary disinfected surfaces here as we need them. We're also not going to have any cross-contamination here. We don't have any perishable items within reach here. And we're just going to be cutting up some fruits and veggies. So since we're not cooking them, we are going to be using protective food safe gloves for this. And let's get into it. Now that we got all our food safety precautions out of the way, we're going to go over how to actually hold a knife before we start any cutting. So there's two basic parts to the knife. Obviously we have the handle and the blade. Now most people will grab farther down on the handle where all these finger grooves are, and that does feel fairly well, but there's not that much control when you're that far down on the knife. So sometimes it's a better idea to at least get a thumb and maybe a forefinger up on that blade. And that way, you have a lot more control. You're closer to what you're cutting and you're closer to the cutting surface. And that actually makes it safer. So as you'll notice, you get a little bit more control while you're cutting, whereas if you're down on the handle, it's more of a chopping action where you can't really get a good slice like you can by holding the blade. Another rule of thumb is to always keep that tip down towards the surface. So whether we're cutting a large watermelon or just a small carrot, we want to keep the knife tilted down. And that will ensure that it's less likely for things to get caught under there, especially our hands or our fingers, and it's going to give you the most control. Now we got a tip down, a good grip on our knife. Our next major tip is called the bear claw or the finger roll. So you'll notice a lot of professional cooks and chefs may do this trick where you'll see their fingers are kind of pointed down. And that's so that we can rest this blade against our fingers. That's why some of these blades are so tall, and then we can actually set that against our hand or just barely rest it on there. And that way we can get going quite fast and not really have to worry about our fingers getting in the way. Another good rule of thumb is a lot of people try to watch on both sides of the blade so they get the knife perfectly straight with them, which may seem like a good idea. You, again, have a lot less control. Try getting perpendicular or slightly turned towards your blade or away from your blade so that it's facing with you. And that way, you'll have a lot more control, and you really don't need to see what's going on the back side of the knife. We're going to stay tuned on where our fingers and our blade are meeting and the things that we're cutting. All right, so now that we can start actually cutting up some of this fruit, we're going to show you how to slice properly. So we've already got half a tomato started here. We're going to keep that tip down, rest against the fingers, and we're just going to slice into that tomato. Now notice once we get to the halfway through, we're going to start coming downhill and getting close to our fingers. So an easy tip you can do is turn that tomato around real quick and go right back to the other side. And there we go. We just sliced up an entire tomato. Not too long. Now that we made it through slicing, let's go on to dicing. So say we're making some tacos or something where we need these tomatoes in a little bit smaller pieces. We already have them nice and sliced. We're going to bring them back together, and then we're just going to do our same technique coming from the back. Notice we're keeping those fingers curled. Helps if you got a nice sharp knife. And now we've cut those tomatoes into a nice little dice. Now that we got these tomatoes all diced up and ready for a taco, if we needed to make these any smaller, say we're doing garlic or perhaps an onion, and we need to make these any smaller, we can utilize another common trick called the rock and chop technique. And this works really good if you actually need to dice or mince up something even smaller. So we'll get out a little bit of our tomato here. Now say we needed this tomato even smaller. What we could do, of course, keeping our tip down and our hands firmly on the knife, we can go ahead and set a finger or two on top of here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to rock the gentle curve of that blade right over the fruit. Now we're going to do this a couple times. I'm just bringing the knife straight up and down and rocking it back and forth. Now just with a couple passes, we've gotten this tomato cut up very, very small. And if we continue to do that 3 or 4 more times, we could mince and even dice this into small pieces. It works really good for garlic and other herbs and spices. Well, that wraps up our knife skills video for you guys. We've showed you all. We've got slices, we've got dices, and we've even got mince for you. We showed you safe ways to hold on to that knife and some other tricks for keeping your fruits and veggies safe for cutting up. And I hope you guys use them in your kitchen with your families soon. We're going to go out there and enjoy that Michigan spring. We'll see you next time.
So there was a lot of information in there, and you might be thinking, how am I going to remember all of that? That's a lot. I don't do all of that. I don't have that kind of knife. You'd probably want a smaller knife for a smaller child so that it's proportionate. And if you really want to know all of that, at the end of this PowerPoint is going to be a connection to our My Health Matters YouTube videos, or you can just go to YouTube and search for My Health Matters. And there's this and other videos. I'm going to show you another one in a little bit. So Cody talked to us a lot about the whole knife safety thing. The recipe is going to recommend a mandolin. So whichever method you use, do it in the safest way possible. And part of that safety is going to be relating to the oven. So think about the rules you want in your house if you don't have any, or see if the rules you've got cover your needs. Does there have to be an adult present? For very young children, that would be a great idea. Now, if you got a 16 or 17-year-old making meals, maybe not. You need some kind of protection against the heat. You don't want to use your bare hands, and a towel that's folded might not be the best choice. That could slip pot holders, oven mitts, whether they're the insulated cloth or the silicone, something that will protect the hands. In the recipe we're about to see, it's going to show pulling out baking sheets and setting them aside to cool. So where do we set the pans so that everything is safe? Because if you accidentally hit something like the edge of a bread bag, ew, melted plastic, not good to breathe those fumes. That's not at all safe. It does smell bad. Melted plastic on your bread, now you can't eat it, and how do you get it off your pan? So just think through. You don't want to set it down on top of your container of ice cream either, right? So have a plan before you start what you're going to do in each step. And then also there's that reminder that the oven should be turned off when they're finished. You don't want your child making baked vegetable chips when you're not home and come home and find that the oven's been on for 5 hours or whatever. You know, with a teenager that could stay home alone and use the oven, we want to make sure that they remember to turn off the oven. So here is the recipe for the baked potato or baked vegetable chips. It's very simple, so I don't have a written copy of it, but again, you can find this on our YouTube channel. So there you have it. Whoops, let's move that along again. So there you have the recipe. It is very simple. It's keeping everything clean and sanitary, slicing, spray the baking sheet, put on the veggie spray, bake them, take them out, let them cool so that some of that moisture evaporates, put them back in to crisp them, and then you take them out and cool them enough to eat them and you enjoy them. Now, I saw in both videos they wore gloves. That might be an option, but if you have little kids, you're not going to find gloves that fit. Because we do talk to people about food safety issues, that was part of it. But in your own home, gloves might not be necessary. You might, like, oh, how do I get the beet juice off my child's hands? There are beets that are not dark red. There are golden ones. There are pink and white candy striped beets. So you could try those. You could also try some other root vegetables like parsnips or carrots or turnips or even radishes. Radishes make really good chips, I think. I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't like them. So what do you do during that time it's in the oven? That's when kids lose interest, when there's a gap and they have to wait for something. So I'm going to show you a little physical activity you can do with them that relates to what they're making. If you want to get up and do this with me, you can do it. I'm not going to get up and do it, obviously. If you do try it and you have a problem, let somebody know. We don't want you to have any problems. If you're not used to vigorous exercise and you want to start it, please talk with your doctor first. So it's just a walk to the garden. So we can pretend to walk to the garden. We can walk in place. We can get the kids talking. What are we going to do in the garden? What are we going to grow? Did we have sweet potato slips? Do we have beet seeds? Whatever else there might be. And you can walk for a little bit while you're talking about it. When you get to the garden, well, let's start at the beginning. Let's plant it. So you can have them pretend to dig the garden. It might be a trowel. It might be a garden spade. You might do both sides. We don't want left-handed, right-handed to one or the other get more exercise than the other. We want it to be kind of even. You can have them rake or use a trowel. They can do squats or bends and dig a hole to put the slips in and cover them. Or they can make a trench and sprinkle the beet seeds and cover it. And once they've got their garden planted, well, it needs to be watered, right? So we could pretend to lift up the heavy watering can, and we can water the garden and set it down, and we can walk back to the house. And if you time it right, it might be time to take those chips out of the oven to cool. So you take them out, you put them in a heat-safe place, and then now it's time to harvest. So we could walk back to the garden, we could run, we could jog in place, we could do whatever our imagination suits us. We could say, oh, look, there's a squirrel. Hey, I see a butterfly. Listen to that bird singing. Whatever experience we would like to explore. Ask our child to imagine with us. And then we could have a garden fork or spade, and we could dig up our sweet potatoes and what have you, and brush off the dirt and carry them back to the house. We could walk some more. And when we get there, our hands have been in the soil. So of course we need to wash hands. So this is a great time to talk about hand washing. We can talk about how we need to get the water running and make it nice and warm. We don't want to wash in cold water and not hot enough to burn us, but good and warm. 1 pump of soap if we have liquid, work up some lather if it's bar soap, and rub the fronts and the backs. We want to spend 10 to 15 seconds rubbing. We want to get in between all the fingers, the fingernails, the wrists, all that kind of stuff. Rinse, dry on a clean towel or a paper towel, all those kinds of things. So that walk to the garden can take up that other baking time or the resting time, and we can put it back in so it can keep baking. It's a great time to talk about what are you going to do with them when you're done. It's also a great time to begin cleanup. If you cook, you really have to clean up. I worked in a fast food restaurant when I was in college, and their expression was clean as you go. It makes good sense. It's overwhelming for me to clean up. I can't imagine being 8 years old. Well, maybe I can. Maybe I can remember it. I don't know. But think about what it's like to be 8 and faced with a sink full of dishes. How about at that time if we store any ingredients that we've been using and put things away? When we're done, we're going to find a safe way to store our final dish if there's any left and we don't eat it all. It's a good time to wipe and clean surfaces. There might be peelings, there might be beet juice that needs to be wiped up. You could wash dishes if you're doing sink washing, or you could stack them in the dishwasher if you use a dishwasher. Anything we used that we're not using now, we could put away during this time. And then wash and dry our hands again, because like if we just scraped up the beet peelings, my hands are going to look kind of icky. And then finally, let's congratulate ourselves. Pat ourselves on the back. Hey, we did a great job cleaning up. The kitchen looks so nice. It makes me want to cook some more. And then finally, we're ready to enjoy our snack. It's a pretty healthy snack, but a snack is from 2 food groups, so we could add something like hummus, which would be a protein, or a yogurt-based chip dip kind of thing that we could make, maybe like a ranch-flavored something. And then we'd have a dairy and a vegetable. So that would be a healthy snack. And we might even have saved some of them raw. Maybe we didn't have room for them all in the oven. Maybe we can have some raw ones and some dried chips. So as I said, this PowerPoint was based on the Sweet Potato Hill lesson from Grow It, Try It, Like It. If you're interested in taking part in something like this, or one of the things we do for people of any age, you can get hold of us. You can get hold of the Sanilac County MSU Extension office. Their phone number is 810-648-2515. They'll track down one of the community nutrition instructors. I'm not the only one in the thumb, and somebody would be happy to serve you. Or you can contact me directly. The easiest way would be email. It's just my last name, Bublitz, Bublitz, @msu.edu. You can look for us in social media. We have Facebook. There's the My Health YouTube. You can also just go online and search for us. You can find news articles that our professional staff have written. So for example, Lori Messing, our food safety specialist, wrote one called Cooking for Kids. So if you go to your favorite search engine and look for MSU Extension Cooking with Kids, you could probably find that article. There are a lot of different ways that we have information to help you put to use to make your life do the things that you want it to do. So I thank you for spending time with me today, and I just want to remind you, kids can cook too.
Wow, that was dynamic. Thank you very much, Carol. You really brought it to life for us. At this point, if anybody has any questions, this would be the part where you type them in the Q&A. I do have a question for you. At what age do you introduce cooking to children?
That's a great question, Carolyn. Thanks for asking it. I don't think it's an age thing necessarily as much as it's an ability. So knowing what your child is capable of, if your child doesn't have good pincer grip and can't pick up fruits and veggies, you might not be able to do that little salad selfie thing I showed you at the beginning. That might have to wait. But as soon as kids can stir, you can, they grab things and stir, they can start doing those kinds of things. Part of it matters how well they put into practice the things you tell them. So if you tell them that the knife is sharp and you don't want to touch this edge, and you have the child who goes, really, let's see, well, it might not be the time for a sharp knife. You might want to practice on a plastic knife or a blunt table knife or something like that. So it's as children gain the different skills, that's when we want to try the different things. Certainly when they're interested. As soon as they're interested in helping, if we can find something that they can do, then that's going to help keep that interest. And you don't know, you might have the next world famous chef that you're raising there. So it's really worth doing that. If nothing else, you're raising a person who's going to be capable of feeding himself or herself healthy foods in adulthood, and that's a worthy goal in itself.
Yeah, as parents, our role is to prepare our children to be successful out in the world. And certainly feeding yourself, it falls in that category. So what about in the kitchen, helping children to participate by getting step stools and those kinds of tools that help it be something that they can physically get to?
Yeah, if they have a hard
Lean in.
Oops, thanks. If they have a hard time reaching the sink to wash their hands or something like that, a sturdy step stool with a non-skid bottom would be ideal. Cooking doesn't have to be done at counters. A lot of people only cook at their counters, but it could be done at a table. And if you have a child-sized table, as long as you can wash, rinse, and sanitize it, you might even want to put a cover on it, like a sheet of parchment paper or something like that for extra cleanliness and to keep it from getting damaged. Even something as simple as a baking sheet on a sturdy chair. I would put some no-skid stuff between those just so it doesn't flip over. But make it so they can reach it easily, because if they're up like this, how can they work? And if it's not something they enjoy, are they going to keep doing it? And let's build those happy memories together by making it something we both enjoy.
Good point. Good point. Yes. So something that I do with the little guy I take care of is I often give him a variety of vegetables or fruits, and I ask him to sort them into fruits and vegetables all from one basket, and I give him 2 other trays to sort them into. And that'll keep him busy for a long time while I'm preparing other things. So for me, I like to keep them in the kitchen because then I know where they are and that they're safe.
That's a really good point. And they can do some of our prep work even. They can measure dry ingredients or liquid ingredients. They can roll dough. If you got something where you're using a cookie cutter, that's a kid thing right there. I'm a big fan of cookie cutters in all kinds of circumstances. They can even do things like help you make a grocery list so that you get the things you need for the recipe you want to make in the future. Maybe they're going to draw the things that are needed so that you can have a grocery list. They might really enjoy just picking which plate or bowl or service container the food's going to go in. Those kind of things seem really simple, but when they meet the need of the child to help and it brings pleasure to you both, then it's really worth doing.
Great call. Yeah, absolutely. We did have a question around cake batter. Is it permissible to feed our children cake batter or cookie batter?
So cake and cookie batter is pretty iffy. Raw eggs can carry a foodborne illness that can make you very sick. For young children, foodborne illnesses can be very serious. They can even be fatal. Raw flour, it's a raw agricultural product. It's really not safe to eat until it's cooked. So if we used something that was like flourless and we had pasteurized eggs, that could be possible. But when we're cooking for people who are at risk, very young people, the elderly, people with compromised immune systems, which could be people of any age, people who are pregnant, we want to take the best care to keep those foods as safe as possible so that no one gets sick. Because, I've had raw cake batter and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it enough to go to the hospital. So let's save the cake batter for the oven and make cake and find cool things to do with the cake. And let's skip that whole going to the hospital part.
Well, let's get real. Frosting can be eaten straight out of a container.
Yes, it can.
It doesn't cause damage unless, of course, your child is diabetic. Then you would want to monitor that. But
yeah, but
in my house, frosting is a food group, so
it's part of the joy of cooking. We wouldn't feed it to anyone for a meal, but not all eating is related to a meal, and certainly we don't confuse it with a healthy food. But we are going to enjoy it sometimes. And yes, that part could be a little frosting on a spoon. And how many of us haven't done the, well, you can't eat this right now, but how about we take a cookie cutter to a slice of bread and you put the frosting on that? There's always a way to help keep that excitement going and keep it safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. Any other questions for Carol? Anybody? I'm not seeing any. I want to thank you personally for doing this. I know that you took time out of your day to share with us, and you did a great job on that presentation. It really captivated us. So we hope you'll come back again another time and tell your colleagues that they have a lot of really good information that might be useful in these types of settings. We'd love to see them too. I want to remind everybody that, first of all, thank you for attending today and watching us either virtually or in person, or live, sorry. We're all in person in our offices right now. But I would like to remind everybody that next month on September 21st, I think is the date, we have another Healthy Lifestyles, and we'll have a panel of speakers around parenting. So, if you think that will be something of interest to you, watch for it. We certainly would love to have you attend at the time that we launch it at noon on the 21st. But if not, we're happy. If you register, we'll go ahead and send it to you, the link, and you can watch it when it's convenient for you, because we know midday sometimes can be very stressful for parents who would want to see that. Anything else I need to do? Any questions, concerns? No? Well, on behalf of the Healthy Living Together planning team, we appreciate you all attending. We appreciate you, Carol, for being here. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month.